Welcome, everyone. My name is Nora Moraga-Louie, and I'm the Rainforest Journalism Fund Manager at the Pulitzer Center on Crisis Reporting. This webinar is part of a series hosted by the Rainforest Journalism Fund, and this one in specific is going to be introducing data visualization. So I'd like to start off by making a few notes about logistics. First of all, I wanted to point all of the participants to the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. Please feel free to insert your questions here at any time during the presentation, and there will be an opportunity for these to be answered about halfway through and then at the very end. So be patient, we'll get to your questions. Now I'm going to quickly introduce just who we are. So the Rainforest Journalism Fund is an initiative of the Pulitzer Center on Crisis Reporting, which is a nonprofit organization based in Washington, D.C. The Pulitzer Center raises awareness of underreported global issues through direct support for quality journalism and also through a unique program of education and public outreach. So now I'm going to turn over this presentation to Hari Surjati, who is our Southeast Asia Rainforest Journalism Fund coordinator. Hari?
Thank you, Nora. Thank you for joining our webinar today. I'm the coordinator for the Southeast Asia Rainforest Journalism Funds, and the RGF will support it's about 200 original reporting projects over 5 years, including the Southeast Asia. We have 2 other Rainforest Journalism Fund in the Congo Basin and in the South America in Amazon. And we accept a proposal from any freelance journalist, full-time journalist for get the fund for rainforest issue reporting in the area of Southeast Asia. And yes, that's about the Southeast Asia Rainforest Journalism Fund. I would like to introduce our speakers today. Keng is one of the advisory committee member of the Southeast Asia Rainforest Journalism Fund, and he's an award-winning digital journalist. He's the founder of the Data and a training program that helps journalists to integrate data journalism into daily reporting. Data and has helped publications such as Foreign Policy, BBC World Service, Media Corp, and Malaysia Kini to enhance their storytelling with data, visual, and interactive component. Keng is also the competition officer and pre-jury member of Sigma Award, a brand new international journalism award that celebrates the best data journalism from around the world. He is a member of advisory committee, as I said before, of the Southeast Asia Rainforest Journalism Fund. And today, Keng will explain and sharing with us the data visualizations. What is data visualization? Please, Keng, you can start. Thank you.
Thank you, Nora, and thank you to Hari as well. Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Depends on where you are. It is 3 a.m. over at Nora Place, Washington, D.C., and it's 3 p.m. In Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, where I am based. And to all our Muslim participants, Selamat Berpuasa. Today is the first day of the Ramadan fasting month. Thanks for joining this webinar. I'm going to share you my screen, and I will be presenting you today at a slides, a deck, and also at the end of the session, we'll have a live demonstration of a tool, of a data visualization tool called Flourish. So you don't have to do the screen capture because I'm going to share with you the slides. So you can access all the links in my slides. I have already put the link in the chat box It is a bit.ly link. You just have to copy and paste in your browser. It will lead you to a Google Share folder. In the folder, there's a PowerPoint file, as well as a data sample. You can use the data sample for the demonstration of the data visualization tool later. All right. So if you have any questions during my presentation, you can just type the questions in the chat box. I will be checking the chat box time to time, and I'll answer your questions there. All right. So you don't have to wait until the last Q&A sessions. You can just type your questions when you have one. I will pause here and there to look at your questions. Right. Okay. Can all of you see my screen, the deck? Cool. So just now, Harry has introduced my company, Data N. So what we do is that actually we're doing training, advocacy, as well as collaborations with newsrooms and journalists all over the world, especially in Asia region, on data journalism. Currently, because of the pandemic, we are also moving into training for fact-checking, as well as information literacy education for journalists, as well as the public. Right, today is an introduction about data visualizations. So this is a webinar for beginners. It is not for those advanced players, okay? So what we'll learn today is what can data viz do, right? Why should we use data visualization in our story? And if we want to use a data visualization, how do we make it a good one? And we will be also looking at all the bad examples. Then if you think that, okay, you're ready to make a data viz, you can make a good one. How do you pick chart, whether it's a bar chart or a line graph, or a map? Then after you have understand all these concepts and principles, then we are going to demonstrate to you a tool called Flourish, which is free and which is very powerful, that can make a lot of different data visualizations. At the end of the presentations, before we publish our data visualizations, we'll look at, there's one more thing to do before you publish your database, which is a usability study. I'll cover that later. So let's start with the rise of visual, in storytelling, in reporting, right? So if you look at these two charts, actually describe the increased use of visual, including data visualizations by New York Times. The left-hand chart, shows the numbers of the word visual in three very important reports published by New York Times. The first one, the first innovation report by New York Times in 2014 is actually an internal document. It was later leaked out. So these three reports, actually, these are self-reflection of New York Times, and also the strategies and the directions that they want to move ahead. So it is like it's like a user manual for the journalists in New York Times, on how do they transform their newsrooms, they want to transform their storytelling. And we can see that more and more emphasis has been put on visual elements to help with their reporting and storytelling. And when this concept is put into practice, you can see the chart on the right. You can see the increase of stories with visual elements, deliberate visual elements. It can be a photo, it can be a chart, it can be a map. Anything that is visual. The numbers of stories have increased from close to 0%, and in 2017 is 12%. We don't have the latest numbers, but I believe it is much higher. Right, so why are we using data visualization, right? The first thing, when everybody talks about data visualization, people always think that, oh, we want to make pretty chart so that it's attractive, so that I can attract more page views, I can attract more audience, which is actually correct, but as journalists, our job is not to make pretty chart, right? The chart helps us to deliver our information. Because that is very important, right? Our first task, our first job is actually to deliver information as effective as possible. So you look at this chart, right? It is an animated chart. We will learn how to make this chart at the end of these sessions. You see that this is the numbers of COVID-19 cases in different countries in the region of Southeast Asia. This is done by reporting ASEAN. You will have access to the link if you download my chart, right? Sorry, my deck. The second one is that data viz doesn't just make things look pretty and attractive. It has the power to reveal insights that you won't be able to see if you just look at the data itself. So for example, this is a histogram. Histogram is a bar chart that shows the distribution of the data. So this shows the distributions of different income groups in the US. So you can see that when it first started, right, it starts with the data in 1971. And you can see the line here shows the curve of 71, right? So when time changes, you can see that the middle income group, this is the middle income group, actually becomes smaller and smaller and smaller compared to the 1970s, right? So you see that again, when 1980s, 90s, you can see the middle income group becomes smaller. One group has become huge over the years, which is this bar, the last bar on the right, and you observe how it has changed. What does this mean? This means that the billionaire and the millionaires, their numbers have increased. And while the middle class has shrunk, the multimillionaires, they have increased, right? So it shows you the disparity that is happening in the US society. So imagine if you don't draw this chart, if you just look at the numbers, right? It is not, if you are very good with numbers, if you are very familiar with data analysis, you might be able to see the trend. But for the ordinary users out there, the audience out there, right? If you are able to present it with this kind of charts, it makes it, easier to understand, and it reveals that, this is the trend that has been happening, in the past 40, 50 years, right? Data viz helps you to explain, complicated concepts and explain the information that you want to deliver better, a lot of time. So this is a explainer published by Washington Post. If I'm not mistaken, like last week or 2 weeks ago, I think 2 weeks ago, right? So it is trying to explain the concept of flatten the curve, during the pandemic. What does it mean? And how can different measures, for example, social distancing, for example, movement control, or we call it lockdown, can help, to flatten the curve. So it is actually a simulations of different scenarios. The first one, the one above, shows that if business as usual, right, people just going around, and you can see that the brown colors are the people who are infected, and you see how things spread, right? And after they were infected, some of them will will recover, right? So the purple color or the pink color is the numbers of people recovered. The brown color are the people infected. So you can see that the curve is high, right? So the next simulation shows you that when we practice social distancing, or we have movement control, where people don't move around, only a small number of people move around. And you can see what happened, to the numbers of people infected, as well as people recovered. You see that the curve, the brown curve, is much, much more lower, right? So if you click on this link and go to the story, there are other scenarios, simulations as well. One that shows you how quarantine can stop the spread of the virus and things like that. And this is actually a very, very popular Washington Post story. It was tweeted by President Barack Obama. So explain things, then the next one that I want to share with you is that data viz can help us to personalize the news content that we are trying to deliver, right? So we call ourselves, usually newsrooms, or media, we call ourselves mass media. Mass media, the concept is because, we are trying to deliver the same information to everyone, right? But because of digital technology, because of internet, we are able to personalize the content, according to our users. So data is able to help you to do that, right? So this is an example. This is a chart published by Flourish. So in this chart, it shows the number of cases, confirmed cases over time for different countries. So what happened is that if you are someone from Malaysia, you can actually look at the Malaysian statistics and compare that with different countries. If you are someone from, say, Indonesia, you can also choose Indonesia and look at how the numbers, develop in your country compared to other countries. So in a way, data is able to help us to personalize and customize the content that we deliver to our audience, according to their location. There are many other examples that use data to personalize information. This is just one of them. So the last thing that I want to focus here is that many journalists, ask me, oh, data journalism sounds, something that we have to put in a lot of efforts. We have to put in new resources to do. And what kind of returns can we get from data journalism or data visualizations? So this tweet that I'm showing you is actually by this journalist. His name is Paul Friday. He is the journalist of Washington Post. So he's actually referring to this story. You remember this simulator story? He said that actually that story, it's the most read ever story in the history of Washington Post. After it has been, tweeted by Obama, I think Shakira or Rihanna also shared the simulation before. So it is very, very popular. And from my experience working with different newsrooms and journalists on data visualization, data journalism projects, right? If you do it the right way, usually you will get much higher page views and time spent, for those stories, right? So this is something, you should bear in mind when you want to try to convince your bosses to put in more resources, to work on data visualizations, and data and creating more visuals to go with the story. Yeah, so the other one is that data visualization can help the branding of your news organizations. So to make your story stand out from others, right? Some newsrooms, when they become very good at data journalism, they even use that, they monetize their talents as well as their skills to generate new revenues for the newsrooms. So I'm going to show with you some examples here. The first one here is a story done by, it's not really a story. It's a project done by Malaysia Kini, newsrooms in Malaysia. I was with Malaysia Kini for 8 years before I went to study and started my own company. So I still work with them. We work on certain projects. This is one of the projects that we work on. This is actually not a news reporting. This is a branded content. So we produce this, and then the client pay us, to produce this. The client is actually the company that is in charge of sewerage treatment, wastewater treatment in Malaysia. So what they want to do is that they want to actually ask people to pay more for these wastewater treatment in the country. But how do you convince that? So we use a data approach to do that. So when you start this, it is a quiz asking you whether do you know how much water Malaysians use daily compared with other countries. So you're able to, for example, to make a guess, right? We have Thailand here, Singapore, Taiwan, US, and where are we? So let's say we are maybe slightly more than US. Yeah. So your guess is here, the Malaysian is here, right? And the story will tell you, how much. So we use a data approach as well as an interactive approach to get the attention of the users. before we tell them what is the information that we want to deliver. So there are several interactive. Where do you stay? So if I stay in Johor, and it will shows you that how much water the people in your state has been using compared to other states, right? And so forth. And then there are other information, and then of course some corporate videos to show how the wastewater treatment is done and things like that, right? So once you have the point here is that once you have this skill or you have the talents to do good data journalism or visualizations, it is actually much sought by the marketing industry. So you are able to create a new revenue stream for your newsrooms. The other one to show you is Data Store, which is started by ProPublica. ProPublica is a non-profit investigative journalism media outlet in the US. It is very good in data journalism. So when it collects all the data and clean the data, and they compile the data, and they actually open up a new unit called Data Store that sells the data to researchers, to commercial companies, and things like that. And the last one is Sigma Awards. This is the awards that this is a new award started last year. Actually, this year is our first year, but the applications opened last year. So this is a new awards that recognize the best data journalism projects, as well as journalists, as well as newsrooms all over the world, right? It's a worldwide competition. So many newsrooms have used this award. They have submitted their projects, and once they were shortlisted or they won the awards, it actually helps them a lot with their branding. We have heard very good stories from those organizations telling us, how much winning the awards can actually help them to raise fund, help them to do their branding. Because I think most of the news organizations today, they don't want to be seen as traditional, or old school, right? We all want to be seen as, we are at the front line of digital transformation. We are able to engage our readers, our audience, using digital technologies, and data visualization is actually one of the very important aspects that they are looking at. All right. Let me have a look at the chat room. So far, all right. I don't see any questions yet. All right, so we'll continue. So just now I share with you some of the examples, and most of them are very current examples on the COVID-19 pandemic. But if you want to look at more or get inspired by more examples, I have listed down all these different publications by region so that you can check them when you have time. The link to the link to all these different media organizations, it doesn't bring you to the homepage of the media, but it brings you to the dedicated data visualizations. Some they call it data visualization, some they call it their graphic page, right? Where they compile all their graphic, all their data visualizations, data journalism. Some of them have interactive graphics, multimedia projects. The first list, right, are those media organizations based in the US and Europe. The second one is English media based in Asia. So you have Hindustan Times, Straits Times, Malaysia Kini, as well as SCMP, South China Morning Post, India Spent. And the third refers to non-English websites in Asia. In China, we have Caixin, Hengpai, the paper. We have Sukeshi, dataviz.cn. We have Apple Daily in Taiwan. We have Reader, Taiwan, Commonwealth Magazine in Taiwan as well. We have Tempo, Kompas, and Kata Data. These three are based in Jakarta, Indonesia. Okay. Then the last one, those are not media organizations, but those are awards that are related to data journalism, where the first one is the new awards, as I mentioned, the one that I am the competition officer. I help to organize the awards. It's called the Sigma Awards. The second is Data Journalism Awards. So it it started for the last 8 years, but it was closed last year. So that's why we started a new award. Before that, I was part of the organizing committee of the Data Journalism Awards as well. The website is still there. You are still able to see all the winning projects and the shortlisted projects. And you can also check out Online Journalism Awards, which is based in the US. They also recognize the best projects, not just in data visualization, but also interactive multimedia. The last one, Outriders Network. They are actually a database, they have a database of multimedia stories, database of data journalism stories from all over the world, right? Yep, I just realized that I looked at the wrong chat box. Now I'm looking at the Q&A box, all right? So any apps of software help to generate this beautiful visual? The first questions, I will show you a tool called Flourish at the end of today's sessions. That is actually a free tool. It's very powerful. You can make a lot of different data visualization using the tool, and you don't need to know any programming skill. Yao Hua asked that many of the interactions with readers are best done if readers have mouse, but most readers access news on phones now. How would that work? The current trend is that you don't try to change the behavior of your users. You try to adapt to their behavior. And yes, especially in Asia, around, I think more than 90% of our users access our content on mobile. So just now, if you click on those links that I've showed the examples, you will notice that usually they don't require you to click things. You don't have to click things, you just have to scroll. So when you're scrolling, the graphic will animate or the graphic will change, when you're scrolling. And that is currently the best practice that everyone has been doing. So don't ask your readers to click things because they don't like to click things. So you should get them to. You should make all your interactive through scrolling. Easy scrolling, right? I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a while. All right. So let me just look at get to all the questions. Does visualizing qualitative data require a different kind of approach compared to visualizing quantitative data? Today, we just cover quantitative data. So for qualitative data, you can also use different visual components to represent that. But that is more difficult because you don't have numbers that you can straight away convert into visuals, right? So today, as an introduction, we are just going to talk about quantitative data, right? Oh, from Brazil, wow, hi, from Brazil. Brazil must be very late there, right, Roberto? Which resources I recommend to get more in-depth knowledge of database? At the end of today's sessions, I will share with you a list of all the resources that I recommend. They include some books. They also include some online courses on data journalism that you can take up, and can learn according to your own pace. What app? I have done this, right? I can, the interactive data visualizations. I use high charts to make those charts, but today I'm going to introduce a tool called Flourish. That is, I think, more helpful for people who don't know programming. Okay. All right, I will come back to continue to put your questions there. We'll look back at the Q&A box after this. So just now we covered why we should use data visualizations and who are the organizations, media organizations that we can have a look to inspire us. Now, hopefully I have convinced you that data viz is good for your storytelling. Now you are ready to make some charts, but first we need to look at there are good charts and there are bad charts, and this is going to be it's going to be fun to look at all the bad charts now. So what doesn't work? Right, I cannot see your faces, right? But never mind. Just look at this chart and ask yourself. Don't look at the numbers, right? Ask yourself which bar is the longest. Don't look at the numbers. Look at the chart here. This is like a crooked bar chart. Which bar is longest? So I guess most of you will tell me that this is the longest, right? The darkest color is the longest. Okay. Now, you look at the numbers. The darkest colors, the one that is dark blue, grayish, it represents 44%. The longest, according to the number, is actually this one. The one that looks the shortest and the smallest. It represents 51%. So these kind of charts, the problem of this chart is that they emphasize design over the accuracy of the information, right? So when you look at the chart, it is confusing. When you find the chart is confusing because you are not sure whether you should look at the total length of the bar or you should look at the end of the bar, this part, right? And you start to look at the numbers, right? 44%, 43%, 42%, 51%. So the message here is that once your audience start to look at the numbers, right, your chart fails. You need to redesign your charts because the purpose of the charts, it is there to help you to deliver the information that you want to deliver, which is the numbers, right? So if your readers stop looking at the chart and they started to look at the numbers to make sense of what you're trying to deliver, it means that your chart fails. So you need to redesign it, right? So tell me, first impression, what is this? What is this visual? So every time I look at it, the first thing is that, oh, this is a map. And which country? This is a US map, all right? So this is a map, right? And then I look at the colors. I look at the title first. Title says changing face of America. And you look at this is a map, all right? They have like different 50 states here, right? Including Alaska. Okay, cool. And then you look at numbers. The red color represents the white population. Blue colors, black population, green, Hispanic, purple, Asian, and others. And then you start to ask, why all the white people, they stay here? And the black people, they only live here. And where are the Asians? Oh, the Asians, they're at the corner. They're at both corners there, So what is happening? What is happening to this map? Are you telling me that, by 2060, this is how the Americans will live by different race, right? So if you look carefully, after several minutes, you might realize that, this is actually 3 bars. This is 1 bar, this is 2 bar, this is 3 bar. And this is the composition of the different ethnic group at this time, 2010. This is 1960, and this is a prediction of 2060, right? We will have less than half of the Americans are white, right? And you wonder like what the designer was smoking when he designed this, right? It's supposed to be a very simple 3 bars here to show you the changes of the ethnic composition of American population. But this designer, thought that, I want to make it into a map. It's not just a map, he even show you like all the borders of different states. So it's very, very confusing, right? All right, this is another one that is, this is classic, right? This is classic. Look at this as a chart that shows you the results of the general elections in the UK in 2017. So as a news organization, this is probably one of the most important story that you publish every 4 or 5 years when there's an election. And when you make mistake, people will remember it and people will make fun of it for years to come. So look at this message, right? The first one, is 31st bigger or smaller than 14, right? 34, sorry. The yellow color is 34. What about 14? Which one is bigger, right? So 34 is smaller, definitely smaller. All right, then what about 0? 0, see, this is 0. 0 is a bit less than 34. It's smaller than 34, but it's much more than 22 because the gray color is 22, right? So these are some of the very basic mistakes that people make. And mind you, this is on the front page of the Sun. Embarrassing enough, right? All right, and talking about pie chart. a lot of data journalists, they actually hate pie charts a lot. Because, sorry, let me go back. All right, because pie charts sometimes can be very confusing and sometimes it's not really useful. But pie chart is something that people like to use all the time when they see percentage. So let's just go through some classic pie charts here. The first one, this is a pie chart that shows you the breakdown of the federal government budget, right? It is not just a pie chart, it is a 3D pie chart. It is not just a 3D pie chart, it is a semi-transparent pie chart. So when you look at this, it is making the pie charts much more complicated. And if you look at each different slice, right? Each slice has its own thickness. And what does those thickness mean? I have no idea. And the 3D, as well as the semi-transparent, makes it even harder to estimate, right? What numbers represented by each slice, because the border between slices are not very clear, right? So in the end, what would you do? You will just give up on the chart and you will just look at the words and the numbers. And when you do that, again, your chart fails. Okay, the second one. This is again a pie chart, but this is not a normal pie chart, right? Because you see, this slice is very big, right? It's like 40%, I would assume, right? But look at the numbers. This is 33.6. And look at this one. This is 35.4. So how come this slice is bigger than this slice, right? So the problem is because instead of putting a flat pie chart, the designers decided that he needs to tilt the pie charts. If you look at my hands here, this is a normal 2D pie chart, but the designer decided to tilt the pie charts. So when it tilts the pie charts, the front that is nearer to you looks bigger, right? The part that is further from you looks smaller. And this is what happened to this pie chart. The third one, I don't even have to tell you what is wrong with these pie charts. It is showing you the GDP growth over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And if you add up all the percentage, it is not going to be 100% because this is not the breakdown or the distribution of data, right? This shows you GDP of different year. And how can you use a pie chart to represent that? I have no idea, right? But these are some of the mistakes, that we should try to avoid. Avoid pie chart at all costs, right? Okay. So alternatively, you can use bar chart to replace pie chart. If it doesn't have to be pie chart when it comes to percentage, right? So don't lock your brain thinking that, okay, when it is percentage, I have to use a pie chart. Doesn't have to. Look at this bar chart, right? It is actually showing you percentage. If you add up all the percentage, the total equals to 100%, right? But if you look at this one, this is much more clearer, right? Because you know which one is the longest. This is 28%. And you can even compare like 16 and 9, and you know how much bigger, 16 compared to 9, right? If you convert that into a pie chart, right, it would be very hard to estimate, whether this slice is bigger than the other slice and by how much bigger, right? The other way of, if you have only 3 parts to show, maybe you can just use a single bar and break it into different parts, right? And to show the percentage. Okay, so these are some of the ways to avoid using pie chart. Think about other charts, And what's wrong with this, right? I'm going to show you an example. This is done by Berliner Morgenpost. It is a media organization based in Germany. I'm going to, this is in German, of course. I don't understand German, but the good thing is we have internet and we can translate the internet. We can translate everything on internet. So this is a visualization story. It is about the affordability of properties in different cities in Germany, okay? It looks at the 3D model here represents the rental price, right? When the rental price is more than 33% of the median income, right? Meaning 1/3 of your income, it means that the rent is not affordable, right? Okay, that's the benchmark they use. So let's look at Munich. The first 3D model is Munich. If I click on it, it will open up a 3D model. So what you can do is that you can turn the model around, right? Okay, so it looks very fancy, right? You can change the year. 2012, much lower. 2016, much higher. Okay, now I'm going to ask you, this 3D model, right? If you live in this city, can you figure out which part of the city does this bar represent, and the other parts? How do you make sense of this 3D model to the locations in the city, right? It's very hard, right? And there's nothing I can do. I keep clicking the model here, and nothing came out. No other information, right? I can only see that, oh, now it's lower, now it's higher, okay? And they make these 3D models, right, for every single city in Germany. So if I go to a small city, I don't know what city is this, right? If you click on it, you can't even, like, the difference, there's not much difference here. And you will just turn it around, there's no red color. So the whole city, it's affordable. So what's the use of this 3D model, right? The team must have spent a lot of resources trying to create these 3D models for each city, but they are not very helpful for your users to use the information, hidden in those 3D models, right? But if you scroll to the bottom of the story and you click on go to article, then you will find something much, much more useful. For example, this one. This again shows you the city of Berlin. And this map is useful because it is not 3D, it's not as fancy as the 3D model, but you can see which area has higher rental. Which area has more affordable rental, and which area has rental that is not affordable, right? And this is useful because let's say if you stay here, right, then you can consider to move next to it, because the rental here might be lower, right? And you are able to compare rentals in different area, right? And you can even change your income. Of course, the richer you are, the more affordable, right? So you can change it to your account and then see which areas are more affordable for you, right? So this is useful, not the 3D model. So what are the lessons that we can draw from here is that a lot of time, people make mistakes because they are too obsessed with the visualizations, right? But we are journalists. Our job is to deliver information as effective as possible. It is not to create the prettiest graphic in the world. So remember that story information comes first. The visualization is for you, is to help you to deliver your information. So don't over design, don't get too obsessed with visualization, with graphics. However, just now you might laugh loud at those examples, but to tell you the truth, even Bloomberg has made mistakes. The only thing different is that Bloomberg, when they make mistakes, they actually own up their own mistakes, and they wrote an article telling you what mistakes they have made. So if you click on this link, you're able to see some of the examples that they put in that article. One of them is this chart, right? This is original chart. They have published this chart, right? And they regret. So this is what they thought, should be published. It was this one is a much better chart, but they never published this, right? They only published this. This is the original chart. And what is the problem with this chart? Just have a look, right? There are two lines here, the blue line and the brown color line. The brown color means trade deficit with China, right? And there are two different scales. One scale on the left, one scale on the right. The scale on the right is for the blue line. The scale on the left is for the brown line, right? Now the problem is here. The scale on the left, it becomes bigger when you go down, right? 100, 200, 300, 400. It is the opposite for the scale on the right-hand side. It becomes bigger when you go up, 0, 5, 10, 15, 20. So I'm not sure about you. I am not a superhero. I don't have that kind of brain power to really make sense of these two different scales and try to combine them together and try to make sense of the relationship between the blue line and the brown line. All right. So according to Bloomberg, right, the team thought that they should have made the chart like this. You know, instead of one chart with two different scales, a better solution would be to have two charts, right? And the scale should go the same direction. So for example, 0 to smaller values, so -100, -200, 300, 400. And this one also, when you go from up to down, the values become smaller, right? So you align the direction of the scale. And these are two different things. This is manufacturing employment, this is trade deficit. So what I'm trying to show is that when trade deficit with China become larger, right, the employment in manufacturing will drop, right? So that is the relationship the story is trying to tell, right? But this is a much better chart than this one, much simpler and also clearer, all right? So what a good data visualization should have. There are, according to the Alberto Cairo, who is the guru in the world of data journalism, we have 4 criteria. The first one is based on good data. The first one is your data must be good. The data must be accurate, must be correct. The second thing is, yes, you want to attract attention using visuals. But remember, don't over-design it. Don't frustrate your readers, right? Make it simple, make it clearer. And the last one, show the right amount of data. This is hard. This is your editorial judgment. It's just like when you do an interview with someone, you got a 2 hours interview, right? He said a lot of good things, but you can only write a 500 words article. So you need to pick the important information. The same principles applies on data visualization. So look at this chart. This is a good chart. You look at the title, top 10 countries by total medal count in the Sochi Winter Olympics. So you only look at 10 countries, and you look at the colors that the designer used, same color, so it looks much cleaner, right? And it highlights United States with a different tone of yellow, right? And it only labels one bar, which is the US, and it tells you it got 28 medals, right? So why is the designer doing this? You know, it is on purpose, because this chart is for a US publication, it's for US audience. And what they care about is how United States has performed in the Olympics, right? They don't care about other countries, right? So the charts only tells you that, okay, US is now number 2, it is behind Russia. We have 28 medals. If you care about other countries, okay, you can go on and to know about other countries, but we think that, you know, we only want to tell you that US is number 2 with 28 and it is behind Russia, right? So the right amount of data. You don't have to show everything to your audience, right? Things that are relevant to your story, things that are information that is relevant to your audience, right? You can have a look at this to see how it simplifies a pie chart into something else, right? While I have my coffee. Right? So you can see that from the pie chart, before and after. This is before, and this is after. Right? The story is about bacon, so bacon is highlighted. All right? I'll show you another example. Again, this is a very colorful bar chart, a lot of information. So you see how it is simplified and make it looks more cleaner, more professional. So again, look at this before and after, right? Much cleaner, right? Straight to the point. Okay. All right. The next thing we are going to talk about is when you want to make a data visualization, when you want to choose a chart. What chart should you choose, right? But before that, let me look at some of the text, the Q&A. All right, from the Philippines, hi. Did you have advice or suggestions for pursuing data viz stories related to COVID-19? Especially where in countries there are a lot of access and transparency in data. Yes, actually we have not. Okay, this is another different workshop, not by RJF, and actually there's another workshop by One IFRA, also conducted by me, but it takes 1.5 month workshop, online workshop. It is about telling stories using COVID-19 data. So you might want to look at that workshop. You can send me an email after this and I'll share with you the information. All right. Would I recommend a cohesive and consistent look for each visualization for media outlet? Yes, definitely. So the colors that you use for your charts, right, actually can reflect the branding of your publications, right? So what I usually advise my clients is that if they don't have a color palette means a set of colors that you always use for all the charts, all the graphics on your websites. If you don't have a color palette, then you can try to stick to your corporate color. For example, if your corporate logo is orange and blue, then you try to use orange and blue as the primary colors for all your charts. So if you look at New York Times, you look at Economist, Bloomberg, right? They all have their own color palette. So, and then whenever they publish a chart, they will use the same colors and they will have a small logo so that when people see it, people know that this is from Bloomberg, right? So it gives you it gives familiarity to your users as well as a sense of cohesiveness, right? A continuity. Okay, will we get presentation and recording after the webinar? Yes, we will publish the webinar after we edit it. And also the presentation, I have shared with you in a Google folder. So if you check the chat box, if you scroll up, you will see a bit.ly link. That is the link where you can go into the Google folder and there is a PowerPoint presentation that you can download. All right, so yeah, whether that is from Economist or Bloomberg, maybe I make a mistake, right? So if it's Economist, then I have to correct that. Okay, I apologize. Let me just check back. Yeah, I think you are right. Sorry, this is a story by Economist, not Bloomberg, guys. Please, if you download the slides, please edit it to change it from Bloomberg to Economist. Right, my mistake. All right, let me get back to which chart for what data. So 99% of the charts of the time, right? You only need about 5 to 6 types of charts, right? In the world, right? In the world of data journalism, there are many types of different charts. You know, if you look at the diagram here, there are 60 different types of charts, right? But most of the time, you just need to have 5 or 6 types, you know, because you need to consider how many charts can your users or can your audience understand. That is the most important rule, right? Because even if you as a journalist, you might be able to understand some very complicated charts, but if your users don't understand, don't use them. So I always try to use the simplest chart, the popular charts that everyone understands to try to deliver my information. So I'm going to go through this very quickly. The first one that everybody understands is bar chart. And bar chart is always Not always, but most of the time, bar chart is the best choice. So bar charts is very good at showing in comparing different categories, right? Because we are able to recognize, which one is longer, which one is shorter. Not just that, we are able to recognize how much longer or how much shorter. We can estimate like, oh, this is about double the length of this bar, right? So it's easiest to understand. But there are several tips, right? When you do bar charts, it is usually good for you to sort it from longest to shortest, right? So it's easy to do comparison. The second is that if you are on mobile, if you want to publish on mobile, if your users access your content on mobile, then try to use horizontal bar charts, because why? Because when you have a lot of bars, if you use a vertical bars, right? If you have more than 10 bars, right? On the mobile screen, right, is narrow, right? It's vertical. So all your bars will be squeezed together. But if you use a horizontal bar, then your users, even if there are many bars, right, your users are able to scroll down and look at all the bars, right? So horizontal bars is always good for users on mobile screen, all right? And the other thing is the y-axis should always start with 0. Because if you start, for example, if you start from 10, 100, right, you would be accused of trying to manipulate the data, right? Because if you don't start from 0, the difference between the bars could look much more bigger than reality, right? So it is quite misleading, if you don't start with 0. So the y-axis should always start with 0 when it comes to bar chart. The second one is also very popular. Most people understand is line graph. But line graph is very different from bar chart. Bar chart is to compare categories, right? But line chart is usually to show changes of data point over a period of time. And the data usually is continuous, right? Meaning that today, tomorrow, or this month, next month, there's a continuity of the data. It's not different category, but it's continuity, right? So using line graph, if you have more than one line, then you can use it to do comparison. For example, the example that I show you, it is comparing the share of income in the US as well as the other one, Europe and the US, right? So you can see that using the line charts is very easy for you to compare not just the changes over time, but also the pattern in different countries, okay? There are some tips. Again, one is avoid spaghetti chart. What is spaghetti chart? Is that chart that have a lot of lines and each line has its own color. So it's very, very cluttered and you can't really see, any trend, or it's very hard to just focus on one line, right? So when you are forced to use many lines, right? There's a tip is that you use gray color for all the other lines and you just highlight one or two lines that you want your users to focus on, right? So you use a color, red color or blue color or yellow color to highlight the lines, and the other less important lines, you can gray them out. You can use gray color, right? So this is good because you want to have a comparison. For example, you want to compare the red line with against all the other lines, but the red line is the one that you want people to pay attention to. So in that case, you can use the colors to help you to do that, right? If that is not an ideal solution, you can use multiple mini charts, meaning that use 4 or 5 charts. Each one is its own line graph, and you put them side by side. Okay, and no dual axis, please. Like the example by economists, right? Don't put one axis on the left and one axis on the right. It is usually confusing. Okay. Heat map. Heat map is when it is very similar to line graph, but when the line graph, when there are too many lines for you to show, you can try to use heat maps, right? So the heat maps is for you to show an overview, a general pattern, right? But you can't do very accurate comparison because why? Because it uses colors. And it's very hard for our brain to compare colors. For example, if you look at a yellow color and an orange color box, right? And you're trying to compare how much yellowish is this box compared to that box, right? It is very hard to estimate the values represented by the colors, right? But using the colors, you can use the overall pattern. For example, this example, right? This shows you the cases of measles before and after vaccine was introduced in 50 states in the US, right? So it doesn't matter, right? It doesn't want you to know the exact numbers represented by each box here, but rather it wants you to know the pattern. The pattern is that once vaccination was introduced, the disease, disappeared, almost disappeared totally, right? So you can see the trend before and after, right? So not for accurate comparison, not to extract specific data point. For example, I want to know how many cases represented by the yellow box here. And then you're trying to find the numbers using the scale down here, the legend here, is very hard. So that is not the point of this data visualization, right? So why we use this not a line chart? Because there are 50 states in the US, right? So imagine if you do a line chart, a line graph for 50 states, you will have 50 lines on the same chart. And that is not good, right? That is not good. You will get a very cluttered data visualization. So in this case, you might want to consider heat map. However, pick your colors carefully, all right? So that the colors can indicate, one end, the difference between one end and the other end, right? So be mindful, as I said, it is very hard to translate the color into a number, all right? If you want to look at all this, these are all published by media organization in their story. So you can click on the link. If you download the PowerPoint presentation, you can click on the link and it will bring you to the story. Choropleth map. Choropleth map is the map that we always see, usually used for election analysis to show how voters in different areas, how they vote for different parties or candidates, right? Next Friday, we will have another webinar specifically on map making. So in that webinar, I will explain more about making maps, okay? So this one, just to show you that sometimes for some countries, right, the real map doesn't really work, because some larger areas, right, they will appear more emphasized than smaller areas. For example, some of the participants here are from Singapore, right? So if we look at the regional map of Southeast Asia, right, you will find that Singapore is very small. So it's very hard to find Singapore in a Southeast Asia map or in an Asia map. But Singapore is a very important country in that region, right? Economically, it's very important, right? But we don't see that. So in that case, you might want to consider a honeycomb, or we call it a hex tile map. So again, if you download the presentation file, under the speaker notes, there's a link for you to look at what is a honeycomb or hex style map. And we'll talk about this more in our webinar next Friday on map making, right? Pie chart, yes. As much as I hate pie chart, I have to say that, people still use them. And sometimes it is useful, right? So pie chart is very good to show you a quick view of distribution, right? Not for accurate comparison, right? So again, tips. First thing, make sure that when it adds everything up, it should be 100%, right? Don't use more than 5 slices, right? So when your slices are very similar to each other, for example, 33%, 32%, and then another one, 31%, right? Maybe it's not a good idea to use pie chart, because it is very hard to see the difference, between different slices, right? So pick your color carefully as well. Sometimes if you use a very bright color for a certain slice, it might make the slice look much bigger than reality, all right? And again, whenever you want to make a pie chart, think about, can you replace it with a bar chart, right? Network diagram, right? This is to show the connections among people or organizations, right? Not for flow of variables. For flow of variables, for example, you want to show that the money flows from person A to person B to company B. You might want to use something called Sankey diagram. but the network diagram is very good in showing complicated network of people or entities. It's very hard for us to describe all this relationship using text, right? Because it's very hard to track. But if you're using a network diagram, then you are able to see how people are connected to others, and the arrangement of the position of the nodes, we call it all the points, different points, can actually show you patterns. If you put all people from this same organization in one corner and another group of people in another corner, you are able to see how many people and how are they related to each other. Okay. Scatter plot. Okay, this is the last in my list. It shows the relationship between two variables. For example, this is the story that I did when I was with PRI, Public Radio International. It's a newsroom based in Boston. So when I was there doing data visualization, I make a chart like this. This is to see the relationship between the FIFA points, which means the performance of the football team of a country's women's football team, right, in that country. Compare that against the gender equality in that country. So the theory is that, my hypothesis is that, if the country has a better gender equality, its women football team should perform better internationally. And this is the data. And it shows that more or less it is correct. If you have better gender equality, then you have a much better perform women football team, right? So I use this chart, right? But after I published this, then I got some feedback from my readers, and I realized that a lot of people actually don't understand scatter plot. They don't know how this is supposed to mean, right? Like this pattern, how this is supposed to mean the relationship between this one and this one, right? So you have to make sure that your users really can understand scatter plot before you use them. And if you want to use the line, the line, we call it the regression line, right? You're able to calculate the R value, right? If you want to go into that, you make sure that your users understand, or make sure that you explain them in a way that they can understand before you pick this kind of chart, right? Before we go into our demo, right? There are two resources that I want to share with you. The first one is this. This is a very simple guide that I did for my training participants, right? Basically, I only listed out line graph or bar charts, right? And then it's like a decision tree which chart that helps you to choose the chart that you want to use based on what data you have. And it goes like yes or no, then you go here, yes or no, you go here, right? The other one is a much more complicated tool. It is actually a web page called Data to Viz. It is an interactive web page that guides you to choose the chart that is most suitable for your data. But again, it lists down more than 50 charts, I think. So only pick the charts that you are confident that your users can understand, right? That is very important. I'm going to skip this, but if you have time, you go and click this link to play this quiz. It's a quiz designed by the Financial Times about data visualization. Through the quiz, you will understand what we call hierarchy of data viz elements and this chart, right? So you just have to play this quiz and you understand, right? This is all right. Before I continue, let me look at some of your Q&A. X-axis should start from 0, Y-axis are the subjects. Actually, no. So X depends on if you're doing a horizontal bar, then this is your X-axis. This is your Y-axis. If you're doing a vertical chart, and this is the X, this is the Y. All right. Can I repeat the workshop I mentioned on COVID-19? I missed the workshop. It's by One IFRA. It's another totally different organizations. One IFRA. it's a journalism organizations. All right, so you just search for one IFRA webinar data journalism. You should be able to find it. And what's your main tips on publishing the same chart for static, printed, interactive online? Should the chart be the same or customized for printed online purpose? So if it's the tool that I'm going to show you is for interactive online chart, but you can also use that for printed and static charts. What happens is that some tools allows you to export the chart as an image file. If you cannot do that, then you can consider doing a print screen of the chart. And what are the kind of considerations that you have to put in is that if it's an interactive charts, right, your readers or your users have the opportunity to click on the chart to look at the data behind the charts, right? But for static, they are not able to do that. So if you have some very important information, for example, this bar represents 500 cases, right? Then you should label the bar, say this is 500 cases when you're doing your static. So what happens is that usually people use the data viz tool to make the simple graphics first. Either you export it as an image file or you do a print screen. After that, they will have post editing of the chart. They will add in annotation or some labels to shows you, to trying to help you to understand the bar better. So that is the consideration you have to put in, because your users are not able to interact with your charts. Then you have to make your charts in all the informations available in a single chart. So that are the some of the considerations that you have to think about, all right? Okay. We have another 20 minutes. Okay, let me go to a very quick demo of the tool. I'm going to show you share my screen with you. Okay. So this is the tool that I recommend. It's called Flourish. The web page, the URL is flourish.studio. Can someone please share it in the chat group, in the chat box, right? Flourish in Studio. If you are looking for a newsroom, right, flourish.studio has a special package, premium package, free for newsrooms. You just have to scroll until the end of the homepage. You click on newsrooms, all right? If you go to the newsrooms, then you will see there is a applications, to get premium account for your newsroom, right? This is sponsored by Google News Lab, all right? But even if you don't have the premium account, you can still make a lot of graphics using this tool. So don't worry about it. But if you cannot have a premium account, of course, that is much better, because you can then make your charts private if you don't want to share it, right? But for free account, all the charts are public, which means that people can find your chart, all right? Great, I'm going to go into, sorry, I accidentally clicked something else. Okay, I'm going to go into my own account. I have an account, obviously. So this is the interface. When you have a new account, then you're able to create a new visualization or a new story, okay? Forget about story first, right? Story is a much complicated, advanced feature. It is also available for free accounts, so don't worry about it. But you just click on new visualizations, and you're able to select different templates. So there are many templates here. So these are all the different types of data visualization you are able to create using Flourish, all right? You can do like the simple one. Most of the charts are here, right? The one we use, you have pie charts, you have bar charts, different types of bar charts, line charts, all right? You can do maps, right? You can do scatter plot, just now I show you, and the other more complicated scatter plot, which I don't recommend. And you can see the more fancy types of visualization. For example, the chart race, the first chart that I show you, right, in my presentation, the bar chart race. You can also do other types of maps, all right? Then there are more like rare charts like Sankey diagram. Parliament chart is useful when you want to visualize, the distribution of seats in the parliament. Line chart race is also good for election, okay? And there are other types of survey is also useful if you are doing a survey, okay? So these are some of the visualization that I always use, all right? So I'm going to show you how easy to make a chart using the template here. So for example, I want to make a bar chart race. So remember that the first chart that I showed you, which has the number of confirmed cases of COVID-19 among the Southeast Asian country, right? So I'm going to do that. You make that using Flourish. So I just click on this template. It will open up a new visualization for me, a data viz for me. So from here, I can make edit to change it into my own data. So the good thing about Flourish is that Flourish always shows you that if you want to make these charts, how you should arrange or prepare your data, right? So first you give it a name, all right? COVID-19 ASEAN, all right? Okay. Then the main two panel is preview and data, okay? Preview and data. Preview is to look at the data viz that you have created. Data is the data that you should put in, in order for you to create visualizations. So the good thing about Flourish again is that it will give you a dummy data, right? These are all sample data, right? But it gives you an idea how you should structure your data. So the country name should be in one column, then the numbers should be here, and and the different columns here represent numbers in different year, right? So now we know, okay, we should structure our data like this. So to do that, I have created a data set. You can also access the same data set in the share folder that I have shared with you. It is called, the file name is called copy of COVID C ready. Actually, I want to remove the copy. So just put it COVID C ready, right? So you can see that I arranged my data. I got this data, of course, is from the Johns Hopkins COVID-19 open data source, all right? So I arranged it. I took out the data for different countries for Southeast Asia, and I arranged the data in the same format, right? If you look at Flourish just now, the country name should be in one columns, and the data of different year. So in our case, it's different date, right? So the data in different date. If you notice here, there's a region and there's an image URL, right? Image URLs is the flags here, right? You have to manually put in the flags. So we don't want the flags here, so we don't have to have the image URL. Because all the countries are in the same region, so we don't put the region as well, right? So this is my data, okay? So what happened is that now I just have to select all my data, copy my data, okay? And I go here. This works like an Excel spreadsheet, okay? You can do the same thing. You can copy everything, select everything using Control A and just delete them. And now they are gone, right? And now we are going to put in our own data. I'm going to paste my data here. Okay, now this is my data, right? You see all the Southeast Asia country and all the data of the confirmed cases of COVID-19 in different days, okay? But look at the one thing that you might notice is the color of the columns, right? So you see that this is a blue color, this is a purple color, right? And this is where you need to make adjustment looking at the panel here, right? So you see that the first one is label. Label say required, you must have a label. Label is column A. And the color is the same, right? Pink color here. And containing the names of the bars, right? So the names of the bars are countries, so which is correct. Then the values are multiple columns of numbers, each column representing a point in time, all right? So D to CL, but in our case, our values start from B, right? Because before that, the sample data by Flourish, right? The categories is in B. We don't have categories, right? Because we don't have Africa or Asia, and we don't have image. So we can leave the image blank, categories blank, right? And when you change the column here, the colors here will also change, right? So now B and C, you don't assign any function to it, right? But what happens is that we know that B and C is part of our values, right? So we need to change this. This is D to CL. CL means the last column CL. Our column should ends at CM. So we are going to change it to B to CM, right? So now when you change it, you'll see that CM now becomes purple color. And B also become purple colors, right? So now it covers all our values, B to CM. Oh, sorry guys. I accidentally clicked go back. The good thing about Flourish, you'll notice just now, is that if I go back, I come back, my changes are still there because it's automatically saved. You don't have to save it. Every time when you make a change, it will be saved, right? It depends on how fast your connection is. So don't worry about it. Okay, now I have the label, I have the values, B to CN, CM, right? It's not CN. I made a mistake. It's CM, yeah. So I should change it to CM. Okay, and now you look at preview. Now you have your charts ready, as simple as that. Okay, so when you want to customize the style of your chart, for example, you want to use different color for the bars, or you want to change the font or the size of the font or the colors of the font, you can do that using the panel here. So I'm going to do that now. Okay. So under the bar here, there are several different options here, right? You can play with it. It will not mess with your data, right? Your data is here, it will not change. This is just to change the style of the chart, right? So under bar chart, for example, I'm going to do the colors, bar colors, okay. So I can do by bars so that they become different colors, but it is a bad idea to use different colors for a single bar, all right? I mean, for all different bars, right? Because it makes it, not very clean and not very professional. So what you can do is actually you can do like this. You can do like Singapore, and you can manually override, for example, gray color. Right. Yep, so now it becomes red color, right? So the other country, you can do the same thing. So I'm going to go to the data. I'm going to copy the list of the country names here, right? Copy, and I'm going to go here and put it here, remove Singapore, because I want to manually assign a color to all the different country, right? So I can type the color, or I can use if you want a more accurate color, you can use the color code. All right. Now you see all the bars have become gray color, right? Only the Singapore is in red, because maybe my story is to tell the stories about Singapore, right? So I can now play. So it is interactive because your users are able to play the animation to see how things change, right? Okay, now you get the idea. You can change the size of the chart, of course, by using under bars, and you can use bar height, specific. Yeah, for example, 5. Yep. All right. Okay. And you are able to also add the important thing that I just showed you that you should do is to add a title, COVID-19 cases in Southeast Asian countries, right? And then the footer, you should give it a source name, right? Where do you get your source from? WHO. And then you can also give a URL of the source so that your users can link can go and find your data source, right? Right. So when you are ready, okay, when you can put in subtitle and text and other things. When you are ready with all this, you can now go to the last step, which is you want to publish it, right? So you can click the button here, export and publish. So you can download as an image file, right? So I'll just download it for still image, right? You can have a look at the file. Yep, so this is the still image, right? It's not interactive because it's a static image, right? So it depends on where you stop your chart, and when you download, you will get the chart for that day, right? Or you want to embed it as an interactive chart in your website, you click publish. And you'll see the first one is the link. This is the link that shows the interactive charts. So this is the link that you can share with your colleagues or your editors, your bosses, tell them that, hey, I'll make this chart. Is there anything you want to change? Let me know. Share with them with this, right? But when you want to embed it in your website, this is the code. This is the embed code that you have to use. There are 3 different options: script, AMP, iframe. Usually, most CMS is the content management system, right? The publishing system that your newsrooms use. Usually they are able to accept iframe embed code, right? So if you want to test this code, you can go to a website called codepen.io. Nothing fancy. Codepen.io, it's a coding website that allows you to practice your code, to test your code, right? So there's nothing fancy about this thing. There are other tools like this, right? I'm just trying to show that when you want to see how the data viz looks like when you embed it on your website, you can use this tool to help you. So you click start coding. You don't have to register, you don't have to sign in, nothing. Just put the embed code just now that you get from here. You can get it as a script, as AMP, as iframe, doesn't matter. All of them work in CodePen, right? So you just paste it here, and you will see this is the chart that looks like when you embed on your website, right? So you can, if you think this is too high, this is too high, yes, you can change the height here. You can change it to, for example, now it's currently 600. You can change it to 400. And it will become much shorter, right? Now it's 400, right? And you can look at the width is 100%, which means that it is mobile responsive, meaning that whenever you change your screen size, right, it always fills up the whole screen. So this is good when you want to show that to your readers on mobile screen. So mobile might look like this. This is how it looks like on mobile, right? And this is how it looks like on desktop, okay? So make sure if you are using an iframe code, your width should always be 100%. It is by default 100%. You can just change the height so that you want to control the height, right? But if you are using the script, then you can also try to put the script here. And you also get the same thing. The scripts is slightly different because the height is responsive as well. When it's bigger, then you see the height is bigger. When it's smaller, then the height will also become shorter, right? So it's responsive, right? So that is how you embed it. You embed the chart that you make on Flourish, right? And just remember that when you want to update the chart, for example, we have new data, right? You just have to go here, paste your data, come back here, and then click export and publish again. Every time you make some changes, you want it to be reflected, you have to click export and publish again, right? So if let's say you embed this chart in 5 of your stories, different web pages, right? 5 stories, you just have to come back here, update the data here, and click export and publish, and all the 5 stories, the charts in the 5 stories will be updated automatically, right? Because this chart doesn't live on your website, it still lives here. It is just embedded on your website, embedded, just like a YouTube video you embed on your website, right? The YouTube video doesn't live on your website, it lives on YouTube website. You are just embedding it. So what if the owners of the video take down the video, then your website, you cannot see the video as well, right? So it's the same concept. It's called embedding, right? So I'm going to stop share my slides, and then I will just, okay, time's up. I'll just finish the rest of my slides. One more thing, very important, called usability study, which means that before you publish your chart, get 5 people to look at your chart, just 5 people to look at your chart, and ask them whether, I actually need to share my screen, and ask them whether they are able to understand your chart or not. So this is called usability study. So a lot of times we fall in love with the charts that we created, and we think that this is the best chart in the world, but it doesn't work for your audience. So how do you know that? You have to ask your users, right? You don't have to ask many. This chart shows you that if you can ask 5 person, right here, you can detect about 80% of the usability problems. So usually what I do is that I will put the chart on my mobile phone, and I'll just show to anyone, not your colleagues. Don't show to journalists, because those are not your target audience. Show to your colleagues in HR, in marketing, show to them. Don't tell them anything, just show them on a mobile phone and ask them, can you have a look? And you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 seconds, stop, and ask this person, what did you get from this chart? What did you get from this graphic? If the first information that this person gets is not what you want to deliver, then you should redesign your chart and ask them, why did you get this information and not the information that I'm trying to deliver, right? So that is always the go-to method to make sure you have a good chart, is always to test it first before you publish, right? So as I mentioned earlier, there are other data viz tools that you can explore. There are other newsletters that you can subscribe to keep you updated about data journalism, because data visualization is just a part of data journalism, right? It belongs to a larger world called data journalism. So these are some of the newsletters that I always check out to keep myself updated about what is happening in the world of data journalism. If you want to learn more about data journalism, here are some of the books and some of the online courses that you can subscribe, you can follow. And I also have a guidebook which is free. It's an ebook. It was published by MDIF, Media Development Investment Fund, which is a media investment organization. So they publish it. The link is all in the PowerPoint presentation, right? And that's all for my presentation today. Okay. I am going to look at some questions. I hope we can still hang in for another 5 minutes, a little bit over time. Right, 2 questions, okay. For students, can we register with newsrooms under our university name? You mean the, with newsroom, you mean the, which
I believe
course
this
you
was
want to register?
referring to Flourish Studio.
I am not sure, but if your university has a publication, maybe that works. I'm not sure, because I am not paid by Flourish. They don't pay me anything for recommending their tool. I recommend it just because that I find it is the easiest for beginners. I myself don't use Flourish that much because I make my charts through programming. I write a code to get the charts that I want. I don't use Flourish that much, but it's for beginners. It is really a very powerful tool. So I'm not sure whether what is their decision regarding university name, but you can try. If you have a a university paper or publication, I think that falls under the category of newsrooms. And can we publish and embed it on Facebook as well? No. So Facebook had its own environment. So what I usually do if I want to publish on Facebook is either I publish it as a static image. If they are animation, right? How do you publish animation, right? I will run the animation and I will do a screen recording. If you are on a MacBook, you can use QuickTime to do a screen recording. If you are on a PC or Windows, you can go and find some online free tools that you install and it can allows you to do screen recording. So when you do the screen recording, you click to play the animation and you record the screen, then it becomes a video file, right? So when it becomes a video file, you can upload that onto Facebook. So it will works like you are uploading a video file on Facebook. If you want to use that, for example, for other social media, for example, WhatsApp, right? Because sometimes video file is too big, right? You can convert the video file into a GIF file, the GIF. Some people pronounce it as GIF, some people pronounce it as GIF. I don't want to get into the war, okay? But yeah, you can make it into a GIF file and then you can share it, right, on social media. So these are the way when they cannot embed the code, then these are some of the tips that you can use. All right, if there is no questions, then before we end, before I pass it to Nora, I just want to remind everyone that next Friday, same time, 3 p.m. Kuala Lumpur time, we have a webinar on map making. And I think you guys will get an email tomorrow or after these sessions that will share with you the information and the registrations of the workshop for next Friday. So I hope you find today's sessions useful. Thank you very much. So over to you, Nora.
Thank you so much, Keng, for taking the time to share with us some tips for how to get started or how to improve our data visualization and what a useful tutorial using Flourish. I just wanted to reiterate what Keng said. You all will receive an email if you registered for this webinar containing some of the materials that Keng shared with us today. And you'll also be able to see a recording of this session as well as the materials that he shared with us today on our website. So keep an eye out for updates on the Pulitzer Center event listing. So thank you all so much again for joining, and please feel free to get in touch with any of us, Hari, Keng, or myself, and our contact information will also be shared. So thank you and have a wonderful day or morning, depending on where you are. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.